Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. This is episode number 8 in my top 100 trance tracks of all time. In this video, I'll be counting down from number 30 down to number 21 as we get closer to revealing the top 10 and ultimately my favorite trance track of all time. Just a side note, as I was, over the years I've been gathering this list, and just in the past, few weeks since I've been fine tuning it and doing the rankings of the tracks after I originally scored them over the last, uh, how many months. I've noticed that I've missed a few tracks here and there from certain artists. I missed a couple labels here and there, which was inevitable when you're trying to do a thorough list, and you sometimes you forget about something. And so I do want to mention that I'm building a small sort of addendum list, and I'm going to add that to the last 41 tracks of the honorable mention, and just finish creating a top 200 list. I think that's probably the best way to do it versus taking those tracks and then rearranging them. But I'm going to do two additional videos sometime in the future, as I finish gathering those ones that I may have forgotten, and sort of include that as like an addendum, and just kind of you know probably rate those within number 160 to 200, just so I can be fair. I mean, again, it's more about the tracks that are on this list for me personally than ranking them. Um, However, when I did get down to the top 20 or even 30, like these particular 30 that I'm going to do, I really definitely scrutinized that a lot more than I did, say, 40 to 80 or something like that. You know what I mean? So I did probably spend more time on the top 10 and top 20. And probably even the top 30 is some sort of, as I sort of compared some to the other, they either dropped or felt like they were a little bit better than the other one. And so that definitely influenced my rating. But, as far as like past like 30 to number 100, 160, like I put them in there for the most part, but I didn't really like overly scrutinize them as much as I did the top 30. So I just want to mention that, but also mention that, I'll have an extra list coming out that'll probably be two videos, 20 songs each for numbers 160 through 200. And then I'll feel really satisfied with having a top 200 list. That'll be a nice stamp on the list, and kind of bring this chapter of my music rediscovery to a close with revisiting these trance songs from most of them from my youth. But yeah, having said that, we're going to go on to track 30, which is an interesting track because I remember when I originally first heard it, I always thought, and this is way before I went to like recording school and stuff like that, like I felt like the edit was always off on the beat. And I always wanted to ask the artist that. And then over the next 10, 15 years, time moved on, and then I got a chance to actually ask the artist if this was, um, if the edit was off on the beat. And he kind of laughed and said he felt like it was too, but it wasn't. And so I thought that was kind of clever. And then we've remained friends since then. But without giving it away, here's number 30. so that was number 30, Influx, aka James Bernard, with his highest ranking track on my list. The first track I ever heard from James, called VS 128. I originally heard it on a Rising High compilation, and the original was actually a 6 minute version, a little bit over 6 minutes, and then this particular first version that I ever heard was was a little bit under 4 minutes, and then later in the '90s I got a copy of Unique, and then I heard the full track, and which was great because it was I'd never heard the longer version until I got this album. But this came out in 1993 on Sappho Records, also Rising High to some extent. But this was an early favorite of mine when I was 17 years old when this song came out. Just love the deep bass line, the rave claps, the sort of rumbling bass line. But the two things that are most important is sort of those chords and that bass line, but then that sort of piano, and then that sort of spacey, what sounds like sort of like stars are twinkling. It's like doo 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 doo, and it's just perfect. It's so concise and perfect. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, I always thought that the beat was slightly off on the edit. Like it sounds a little bit too fast on the edit. And then I asked James Bernard later, and he said no, but he thought it sounded a little bit off as well, but it wasn't. So it's a strange anomaly with that. It's just the way maybe it was. Maybe I wouldn't say it was edited, but maybe it's the way the beat is. But it almost sounds like it's an off edit for me. Um, but I've never tried to mix it, so I wonder if it would mix um, any differently with trying to put on beat. But just a classic song, it comes in a rating of 85 out of 100. A lot of memories with the song. This was kind of like my version of what sort of spacey techno was. Like it wasn't. I didn't really think it was like trance. I just knew it was dance music and techno, and it sort of was probably more melodic. Was it trance? I didn't think it was ambient for sure, but I just love the spacey techno and electronic music, and this is a classic for me. This is an old classic for me. There's something so simple about it, but something so charming about it, and it seems so simple, but it just has so much personality and character to it. Just something so simple, and it's always strange, like when you hear a track like this, and it brings back memories, and it doesn't sound dated because it's kind of hit that level of, I don't know, maybe it's a different level of like of appreciation, but it doesn't sound dated to me. I mean, I know it does sound dated if somebody else heard it, but like to me, it's just so memorable that it kind of almost supersedes being uh, dated in any kind of way because it has so much character and personality. Just a very memorable track for me, and one that was important for my youth. And yeah, my favorite James Bernard track of all time. And actually, yeah, it'd be close between that and Phosphorus or Youth on Atmospherics. Those are ambient tracks though, but yeah, it'd be close between one of those. Probably Youth would be my probably tied with VS 128 as far as my favorite, just ambient and techno or trance. But yeah, let's go on to number 29 with my favorite track from this artist.
this advice, you will enjoy a pleasant embrace.
Alright, so that was number 29, my highest ranking Australasia song, called Principles of Pleasure, which came out in 1993, originally on Pitched Up at Reality and on Magic Eye Records, and comes in at a score now of 86 out of 100 as we move up in ratings. Um, by saying this is my favorite Australasia song is so close with a lot of other tracks, and not a lot of their tracks. Some of them I consider ambient dub, some of them I consider ambient. I'm not a huge fans of their more full on trance that they sort of went to in sort of like 96, 97, which totally ties with my my opinion of trance kind of losing some steam around 96, 97. Australasia was a good example of that. I really liked their first 4 or 5 albums, but they're a little bit more in the ambient dub and maybe even a little bit more techno than trance. But sometimes when they hit a trance note, this is I think their third time on my list. Um, there might be another one that I have to add in there though. I feel like I'm forgetting a song of theirs on this list because I feel like there should be another Australasia song in here somewhere. But um, this one is my favorite. It's such great psychedelic sound. Like it's not a fake Eastern sound, if you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of times where I'll play like ambient dub, and it sort of has like an Eastern vibe, and you're kind of like, it's kind of, especially around this time from like '93 to '97. Um, Not to say any names, but I reviewed one recently that sort of had an Eastern influence to it, and it was from kind of the same time actually, and it just didn't work for me. And a lot of the Eastern stuff kind of sounds a little cheesy, and I can see if like me being a Westerner, like if it sounds cheesy to me, then you can imagine how cheesy it sounds to somebody who's like from India or who's heavy into Eastern sounding. Like there's a sitar at the end of this song that sort of does like a higher note, which is really clever. I don't know if I'll edit it into this track, but maybe I will just to show you. Hopefully, I don't know what I'm going to edit of this song in it till I actually do the edit video. But maybe I'll make sure I try to tie in that part. It's sort of towards the end. It's a 9 minute song though, so I'll try to piece together that part in there. But this, the way the melody rises in this track, it's different than a trance track. It's more towards the eastern side, but it almost has like a soundtrack vibe, like a movie sound. The way it flows and comes down, and it's more cinematic than really kind of a clubby dance trance track. It sounds mystical and kind of trippy, and I love the kind of tribal groove, the ambient kind of dubby kind of groove in there. Very tribal, very cool. And there's this one part towards the beginning. You may have heard it, but I'll try to put that part in there too, since I'm editing it, where it kind of sounds tribal, and then it sort of picks up, and you can hear the rumbling in the bass line in the bottom frequency, and it really kind of sort of almost feels like it's picked up a little bit, like it picked up a little bit of pace, but it just kind of gets busier and gets more busier as it kind of moves towards that melodic part where that part kind of comes in. But I just love the really psychedelic kind of Eastern feel in this track. Great dubby ambience, and the melody just kind of goes to the higher notes. Really beautiful. I love this track. It's again my favorite Australasia song. Comes in a score of 86 out of 100. Principle of Pleasures. And let's go on to number 28. Yeah. Alright, so that was the New London School of Electronics, or NLSE, with the track called Voices of the Rainforest. This came out on Rising High Records in 1993. One of my favorite trance tracks that is probably more tied to the chill out and ambient side than most of my tracks on here that are this high. Certainly the blackout version is really good on the other side. So good I had to get 2 copies. It's just one of my favorite Rising High tracks, period. Comes in at roughly around, I think it's around 11 minutes or so. Love the ambient parts. Very tribal. Definitely has a chill out vibe in here. The bass line is really interesting as well. Kind of a post rave. You got to remember back in like 92, 93, some of these producers are just, coming out of the post rave and sort of, at the end of the sort of more peak night rave period of 90 to not the acid house, but, more of the rave of 90 to 92. And, people are really getting into chill out music and more, just more, not as hardcore tracks, but they're still sort of using a lot of different sounds. And this is a great example of that. Like those drums and, I mean, these producers back then are just kind of throwing everything but the kitchen sink sort of into a track to see if it'll work. So they're like, okay, I'm gonna do some tribal stuff and let me throw these drums in, and it's just so unique. Some of these sounds in this track almost sounds like a planet is forming in some parts. Just kind of has like a dreamlike effect to the keyboards, and probably around like 6.5 or 7 minutes, this acid part line and starts working in and starts getting a little bit more aggressive, and then it sort of feel very organic track as well, even though it sounds very electronic. Just Voices of the Rainforest, just a great title for it too. It sounds just like that. Um, Again, probably, without overanalyzing any track that I have above it, might be my most favorite trance track that's equally, make me feel like it's ambient too. If somebody said, hey, what's your favorite trance track? Or what's your favorite trance track on Rising High? I probably wouldn't necessarily go to this right away. But if I remember correctly, then I'm like, oh, I really like that one. But it always, in my mind, it always feels like more of a chill out or an ambient song. But when you actually listen to it, there's definitely a lot of trance parts in here. And so when I was going through this list and putting these tracks on, it was, I didn't have any second thoughts about putting it on the list, but I definitely felt like I felt in my back of my mind like this was kind of always made me feel like it was an ambient track. But the more I actually analyze it, it's definitely a trance track. But yeah, it comes in at a score of 86 out of 100. That was the New London School of Electronics Voices of the Rainforest from 1993. Let's go on to number 27. Drum Club at number 27. Track was called Delushed, which came out on their 1994 album called Drums Are Dangerous. Of course, I got the CD because this is the funny thing about the vinyl is it's a double vinyl, but it definitely needs a repressing, probably a remaster. It doesn't. It sounds very thin on the vinyl. There's a lot of. It's a lot. It's quite. I wouldn't say it's a super long album, but there's definitely some sides that are probably pushing 17 to 19 minutes, and it's not the most dynamic, but love this album. One of my favorite albums when I think of I was such a huge Drum Club fan back in those days, like 93, 94, 95. How Do You Make Me Feel? I think it was 92, right? So I just was a huge fan of their stuff. And, I've talked a lot about Australasia and Paradox. Um, I don't have any exquisite corpse on this list because I kind of consider them more techno, but I also talked about Air Liquid. And Drum Club is another one of my favorite sort of uh, kind of tribal trance that sort of had some techno and some ambient dub in there. Was a huge fan of Drum Club, and this is my favorite Drum Club song. I think definitely my favorite Drum Club trance track. Probably the only one that I think is probably fits more on the trance side. It's still very dubby. The bass line very dubby. One thing that's really great about this track is the percussion is really clever throughout it. If you only listen to if you don't even focus on the melody or anything else, and you just happen to focus on the rhythm, like it sort of does its own thing and creates almost takes on a life of its own, and sort of attached to the rhythm just has this creative kind of like with the real drum sounds and the way the track just paces out. It's really really cool. I really like the percussion in here, and especially through the elements of when it kind of the melody break comes in and then it's back in and then sort of builds up again. There's just a lot of parts where the percussion is really strong in this track. But the melody break is just epic. It's mystical, and then it kind of comes in, and it's sweeping too. It's kind of like a sweeping big melody break. It's just awesome. Then it kind of goes into like a sort of a tribal, and it's a little bit more peaceful. And the voices are mystical, but they're not like overly done. And nice work on those. And the main melody is great. But just kind of goes back into the rhythm, and it just very peaceful with the end of that melody break still kind of continuing on, and then the last 2 minutes are just because it's a little over 9 minutes. The last 2 minutes is just like an ambient dub part where it feels like the track is sort of slowing down, and that's kind of a creative way to end the track as well. But just a classy track, and it's nice to see Drum Club on this list because I totally forgot about this track, and then I was like, this is more trance than techno, or more trance than ambient dub in my opinion. But it is really close. But it gives me those trance vibes, and I'm glad to see a Drum Club track in this list. And love Delushed. It's always such a great track, and that I'll never get sick of that break. That melodic break is just so engulfing. It's like a wash. It's like a beautiful shower. It's just like you get into the shower on the beach somewhere, and you're just like, oh, it just covers you. It's great. Let's go on to track number 26.
We're here.
child of the universe, receive and be love.
right, so that was Tranquilizer by Tranquilizer. Self-titled, I guess. This is the Casper Pound Hippie Mix. I originally heard it on a compilation, and then later on I picked up this promo copy back on Leptone Records. Really love seeing these old promo copies, man. I really cherish some of these old copies of these records and promo copies. I collect a lot of promos as well. A lot of my Rising Highs are promos. Sometimes I'll have to go over that where I have the promo sheet as well. This song is always tied to Rising High, even though it wasn't originally released on it. It just feels like a Rising High track for me because it was on a few of the compilations. But Casper Pound, and Tranquilizer's perfect mix on this one. I love how this track is chill, spacey, but then it's got a break beat on top of it. Underneath it. One of my favorite vocal samples of all time. Just love that vocal sample. Great balance of ambient, sort of chill out, ambient house. Has a little bit of Balearic vibes on here. You could definitely play this in a chill out set. The melodies are great in this. There's like a whistle melody, and then there's like a twinkling melody, then a layered melody. It sort of sounds celestial, and it kind of goes up and down really nice. The deep rolling bass line and the break is really cool. There's so many great parts that just kind of flow together, and a little bit over 8-minute track. Nice and spacey. I gave it a score of 87 out of 100, so we're up to 87 now. But we're getting into some big hitters for me personally, some classic tracks here, and from here on out, it just seems like it's just some of these tracks just have so many memories for me. It's almost hard to talk about some of the memories in a couple minutes in between these tracks. But these tracks have so much memory for me, especially the last couple, the Drum Club and Voices of the Rainforest, and now Tranquilizer and the next track. You know what I mean? It's just, we're going through a lot of great memories from my childhood right here. Let's go on to track number 25 as we enter into the top 25.
Compromise. Trip to paradise.
Your brain will not know the difference. Your brain will not know the difference.
paradise.
I think you would be much happier with one of our Saturn cruises. If outer space is your thing, I think you would be If outer space is your thing, I think you would be much happier with one of our Saturn cruises.
Alright, so that was number 25, Sequential, which was DJ Chris and also Pete Namlick. The track was called A Trip Through Paradise, which originally came on their full-length Sequential album. Also originally released on Fax Records, and then here's a copy on Rising High. One of the first trance tracks, probably the first trance track I ever heard on Fax Records, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of memories with this track. Classic. I like this. It's a little bit more serious. It's kind of got a sort of a more techno rhythm track because it's got some bells in it and it's got some sort of toms, drums that are sort of building up, and then it sort of becomes into like a breakbeat, a light breakbeat track with the drums and everything. Just really creative with that. The spacey main melody is great. Love the Trip Through Paradise vocal, and then also the other sample, and then the other sample that says your brain will not know the difference. Just great stuff. Great ravey trance track. Cascading piano melody. The high-pitched arpeggio in there. The whistle sound. Great use of samples again. Just man, great memories with this track. Over 33 years old now. 32 years old now, this track. Just blows my mind. Great memories with this track. Featured on quite a few Rising High compilations. Don't also say, just a classic for me, for sure. With a score of 87 out of 100. That was Sequential's A Trip Through Paradise. That was number 25 again. Let's go on to number 24. so that was number 24. Track was called French by Deepside, aka Ludovic Navari. FCOM Records, 1993. I don't have an original copy of it. I did get the reissue. I think the reissue came out by 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. Um, I debated. This is one of the tracks I debated for a few days in whether I wanted to put it on or not. There's probably about 5 to 7, 5 to 8, maybe up to 10 tracks where I was kind of like on the edge of whether they're techno or trance, and this was one of them. And a lot of them are high ranking songs as well. In fact, there's probably about 4 or 5 coming, maybe even 6, because it might be a down tempo one in there. So almost it's trance, but it's almost, you could say it's down tempo too, but it's classic, and people think of it as sort of tied to more trance. But I went back and forth on quite a few of these tracks and was like, oh, should I save it for a techno? It's very trancey though, but as a techno, I just went back and forth on this track specifically. To me, it does feel a little bit more Detroit techno than trance. Certainly, the whimsical, playful Detroit melody and the layering is very Detroit, and which certainly makes sense from FCOM Records. Certainly, be inspired by Detroit techno at that specific time, especially. Gotta love the wobbly acid in here. But once that sort of melody takes off, and it feels like you're in flight, like it's soothing, it's epic. But the beat is a little bit more trance than techno. It's a little bit more on the forefront, I feel like, than techno is. You could say Detroit techno, you could say trance. It's right on the edge for me. But I think we can probably beg to differ. I could probably see either side's opinion on this one, but I don't think anybody will disagree with me that it's a great track. I love this track. Um, it's one of those tracks that once you hear, the first time I heard this track was on the Laurent Garnier X mix, or was it Dave Angel? Dave Angel's X mix. And probably I didn't hear this till later '90s, probably like '99 or something like that. I had a friend that had the X mixes on VHS, and when this track comes in and it's just so flighty, and there's so much serious techno back in '92 and '93, and you hear something like this and it's so floaty and so whimsical and peaceful at the same time, but still being techno and trance. It was just such a great track, and it's got so much character, and it's not overdone, and it doesn't come back to the same parts like multiple times, and it's not long drawn out. A little bit over a 5 minute track, just a uh, nice tight, techno or trance track, whichever. But just a lot of memories with this track. It's a great track. Probably my favorite from Ludovic Navari, who I really admire a lot, and he was doing some great EPs back then under Deep Side, and also Ludovic Navari under his real name. FCOM was so strong in 1992, '93, especially with like Shaz and Saint Germain, which is the same person, but Ludovic Navari as well, Laurent Garnier, Nova Nova. Later on, I was Aqua Bassino stuff was great. Yeah, even youngsters and stuff like that. So many great stuff. Averill was really good on FCOM. Later on was the big track. Blanking on. I have a copy of it somewhere. So is this Skidoos or something? Not Skidoos. I'm blanking on that. The big popular one. It got really popular around like 2000 on FCOM Records, or later on. Yeah, I guess it was, FCOM, not FNAC. Mr. Ozo, Flat Beat. Yeah, is it Ozo? But Flat Beat around 2000. That track was a huge hit too. But FCOM was so strong, and case in point, let's move on to number 23, which happens to be an FCOM track. Alright, so that was number 23, Aurora Borealis, with the track called Milky Way, which came out on FCOM Records in 1994. Of course, Aurora Borealis was also Shaz. We also recorded under Shaz, and I first heard Milky Way on this compilation in 1996. This could be my favorite fast trance track of all time. Like, the melody is beyond epic. It just builds almost goosebump material every time I hear it. It just doesn't build up for like a few stanzas, like maybe 30 or 40 seconds. It's just continuously building through almost minutes. It seems like at least like 2 or 3 minutes. The track is still building up. There's so many different parts of it. The piano part, and it's just an epic track. I mean, like I don't even. There's not really anything particular I could talk about it. It's just full on fast and epic melody. Like I don't know. There's really nothing else that really stands out, but it's just a great melody. And when I was originally doing this list, I had this track in my top 10. Actually, probably in somewhere in between like 8 and 5 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And as I was kind of narrowing down this list, this one kind of lost some steam for me because it probably does. It is more on the straightforward trance, and maybe it feels a little bit more dated, probably, and maybe that's why it lost a little bit. But it was probably more so that I just compared it to some of the other tracks on this list, and I was like, well, I like that song a little bit better. Again, when I got into the top 30, I kind of compared them a little bit more, especially the top 20. And this one just kind of fell out of the top 20. But still, an epic track, for sure. And again, probably my favorite fast trance track of all time. It's just such a great track. Not too much else to say about it, though. But let's go on to another track that I had a difficult time deciding, not an extremely difficult time, but they're kind of known as a techno artist, and to put them into a trance list, I like to be very exact on it, but I feel like there's a couple other songs that sort of blend into trance, and this was one of my favorites by them. Alright, let's check out number 22. So that was number 22, Orbital, with their 1991 track called Belfast. This track originally was on FFRR Records, and originally on the Green album, as most of you guys know, their debut album. I was such a big Orbital fan in like 1990 to 96 through the Green album, Brown albums, Snivelization, and Insides. Loved those albums. Then, All Together came out, and I think there was another one in there, All Together, and then, yeah, just kind of middle of nowhere. Those two albums were okay, and then I kind of stopped listening to Orbital probably around 97, 98, somewhere around in there. But, man, for a good 4 or 5 years there, they were probably one of my favorite electronic acts. And one of the most creative, I think, when it comes to being able to evolve a rhythm and also in an energy way. Like, if you guys have ever seen their Glastonbury shows, they were one of the only bands, one of the first and maybe one of the only ones to really be able to carry a concert, that was an hour long with rave and techno music. Like, they did an excellent job of that when they on their Glastonbury shows. I have the box set DVD up there of the Glastonbury shows, and it's a great watch if you ever want to see some early '90s good music and good energy in a electronic set. By two artists just standing behind keyboards. Orbital, those Orbital ones are great, but this track has a lot of memories for me, and I definitely think of Orbital more as a techno artist than a trance artist for sure, but a few of their tracks kind of give me trance vibes for sure, and this was always kind of one that was kind of on the edge, and I think it's because of the voices in here, the singing and the melody. It's a little bit more Eastern sounding, so it's a little bit more mystical, and that certainly for me feels like it's more tied to trance. Maybe even tribal, but trance more so than techno. But love the light breakbeat on here. Slower pace. Orbital were just masters. Again at creating addictive tracks where they just become more and more addictive as you go, and making unique sounds, sort of tying into their rhythms. Just very clever stuff they did, and very catchy stuff. And I think that, when everything's said and done, I think Orbital will probably go down as probably the best techno artist of the 90s. I'm not saying my favorite, but, it's hard. When you think of 4 or 5 albums in a decade that are really strong by one artist, can't really say that about too many people. Orbital did that in almost half the decade. But, just amazing artist. And Belfast comes in at now a score of 88 out of 100. Just classic track. Belfast, you love the ending, how it slows down. So many memories of this track. This is actually my dad's favorite Orbital song as well. My dad loved this track, and it's just so beautiful. Just a great track. Comes in at number 22. Just classic, screaming classic. Belfast. All right, let's go on to the last track on this video, number 21. right, so that was number 21 and the last track for this video. That was David Morley's Evolution from 1992 on Apollo Records. With a score of 88 out of 100. Love the chill. Love the analog sequencer in here. It just gives me analog sequencer dreams right here. Just has a great sort of almost Tangerine Dream slash sequencer feel in it, and a little bit Eastern sounding in there. Ambient magic, nice and gentle. Nice gentle beat. Has some aggressive sounds in there too to kind of balance out, but just a nice easy ride track that's kind of chill out, a little bit celestial, a little bit spacey, but it kind of sounds more like has an aquatic feel to me as well. And I hope to have David Morley on my channel in the future and do an interview with him. He's been a friend for a while, and I really adore his music and big fan of all his music in the last 30 or 33 years or so. Actually, probably 36 years. I did feature his space opera track on this list a little bit farther back, but yeah, I just love this track, Evolution by David Morley. My favorite trance track he's done. Comes in at number 21 with a score of 88 out of 100. Great track. But yeah, that brings a closure to this episode, number 8. There's only 2 episodes remaining, and when we next convene, it'll be the top 20. But yeah, that's my list. Episode 8 for my top 100 trance tracks. Thank you for your time. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I certainly appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next video. All right, thanks a lot.
Electric cafe.